So if you can give me your kind of initial reaction, there's a bit of euphoria on the markets today. They've seen a positive signal from Brussels, but this is kind of deja vu, isn't it, from the 21st of July? Will this last?
I don't think so, not beyond at most a few weeks. And it's not just deja vu from July, it's also deja vu from March and all the other deals before that. We've seen this consistent reaction where the fact that a deal has been agreed, any deal, is important and impresses people until they start deconstructing it and until parts of it start unraveling. I don't expect this time to be different. What is new is, for the first time, I think that the arrow of the direction they're moving in is at least pointing in the right direction, which it wasn't until recently. The second thing, which I think is good and new, is that at least they are starting to talk about most of the main important issues, which was not just Greece as it was until recently, but the much more important Italy and Spain, which is the discussion of the European Financial Stability Fund and also the need to strengthen the banking system. What is still missing from this debate are the two big issues of growth. There is no strategy for growth. And the second is the very important role that the European Central Bank needs to play.
Okay, and before we get into the role of the European Central Bank, can you just talk us through the leveraging of the EFSF and, of course, this private haircut?
Well, the leveraging of the EFSF, here's how it works. It's rather simple, which is you have a fixed amount of guarantees that you can offer as Germany, as France. There's a red line. They're not going to increase that. And the total of that spare guarantee which is left is roughly 250 billion. Now, Italy and Spain have bonds of outstanding bonds, which are about 2 trillion. So that's about 8 times as large. Italy and Spain need external help, but you only have 250 billion to provide help. So what can you do? You can't make money out of thin air, but what you can do is, instead of providing full support as the European Financial Stability Facility is to Portugal and Greece as well as to Ireland, it only agrees to provide partial support. So it is the difference between a full insurance, if you're insured against, all medical exigencies, versus where it only covers your insurance up to a certain limit. And we are in that second option now. So the way of thinking about it is that because the problems that Spain and Italy are facing is that they are basically solvent, they're not bankrupt, but if they continue not to be able to borrow at reasonable rates in the market, they will go insolvent. So we need to reduce the borrowing costs for Spain and Italy. That is the single most important issue in the euro crisis today. Now, investors they are lending to both Spain and Italy. It's not that they're not lending. China is still lending, private banks are still lending, pension funds are lending. But instead of charging the normal 3 or 4% interest rates that they were before the crisis broke out, they're now demanding interest rates of 6.5%. We need to bring those down to 4.5% or so. So the idea is that the EFSF, with its 250 billion of dry powder, goes to the markets and says that we are going to issue a first loss guarantee against any Spanish or Italian bonds you buy, which means that the new bonds that you buy are going to be safer, because any loss that you might have on it, we will cover the first part. Let's say the first 30%. Now, the big question remains whether this will cajole and convince investors into actually reducing the lending rates that they are charging Italy and Spain enough to bring it under the 4.5% threshold. So this is something that is unknowable until it has already happened. There are some good reasons for skepticism. For example, if you imagine a state of the world where Italy will not be able to repay its debt, it is going to be a bad state of the world where, in all possibility, other EU states would also be in very serious problems, and some large banks presumably would already have failed. And to expect investors to believe that in that horrible state of the world, the EFSF and France and Germany would actually honor the guarantees they have given, it's very hard to convince anyone that would happen. So if you look at the leveraged EFSF as a pure financial facility, it collapses as a model, as a credible model. A much better way of looking at it, which again is not for sure will work is as a political guarantee, as a way for Spain and Italy to get support and get the confidence of their fellow member states, where Germany and France are saying, we are so sure that Italy and Spain are safe, that we are putting ourselves in harm's way. And here we are ready to absorb the first loss because we are so sure that we never will have to. This does have some good signaling impact. The second is that this can bring about behavioral change. Now, we know in microfinance, despite the fact that money was lent to some of the poorest people in some of the most remote villages around the world, the repayment rates have been rather high. And the way it has worked is that the repayment responsibility has gone to groups, not just individuals. So everybody in that peer group, for example, in a little village where everybody knows everybody, is responsible for everybody else's loans. What this means is that it makes sure that there is enough monitoring, there is enough surveillance of each other, so that France and Germany would monitor Mr. Berlusconi and what he does much more closely, put all possible pressure on him, that it might actually induce him to change his behavior and not do things that are stupid or risky. So I think there are these two somewhat positive elements in the EFSF discussion, but I think it's not going to be enough. It will only a band-aid when what we need at this stage is an ambulance. And that's where the European Central Bank, which has a decision-making structure that is majority-based, so Slovakian parliaments can't hold us hostage anymore. It's undemocratic somewhat, but unfortunately in a crisis you need speed over decision-making more than accountability. So it's majority-based. The second is its cost of funds is zero. The EFSF needs to borrow at 3.5 or 4%. So any help that it might give to Italy and Spain is not going to bring their interest rates below that. Whereas the EFSF can just make money. The European Central Bank can just make money. And the third point is it has unlimited firepower. It has unlimited balance sheet, whereas the limits of the EFSF are very clear for everybody to see. So for these three reasons, the only way we are going to reliably stem panic, rebuild confidence and create space for growth is for the European Central Bank to significantly ramp up its role. And that is off the table for now.
Okay, so it's a step, but it's definitely not the end. And just finally on Greece, Papandreou said this week that it was the end of an era for Greece, but it's the start of a new era, and that means more power in the hands of Brussels. And the Troika going to set up camp seemingly in Athens and have more of an eye into the budget books. How do you feel about this and the way the road that Europe is trying to go down now with more fiscal consolidation?
Well, I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, Greek politicians have failed their people completely. And I think that the current crop of politicians and political leaders and political parties are also hugely enmeshed in a state that has been captured by private interests. That it's very hard to see how, no matter how much external help one provides, Greece, with its current crop of leaders, would be able to pull itself out by its bootstraps. So I think the possibility of having a neutral external party which is able to keep some distance and is able to go over the heads of entrenched interests is a somewhat attractive possibility, both for creditors but more importantly also for the future of the Greek economy and Greek people. That having been said, it does raise some very serious questions about what democracy means, what sovereignty means. I am not sure where exactly I land on this. The fact remains that Greece is entering a new era, and unfortunately it doesn't look good. It is going to be years of very hard slog. It is going to be gut-wrenching changes, some of which are necessary, some of which are unnecessary. It is going to have austerity for the foreseeable future. But the pace of that can be slowed, and it can be designed in a way where the impact on the lowest segments of income, on the poorest people, can be minimized. What is not being done enough is tapping the huge pool of assets that rich, wealthy Greeks have stashed abroad, including in Switzerland. If Europe were to together act and put pressure on tax havens to repatriate some of that funds. We are talking here the hundreds of billions of euros. There are very reliable estimates. Rich people don't exactly pay taxes in Greece very much, and they've not been doing it for years. So we're talking here a significant amount of wealth that if the EU were to be serious about helping Greece, if it were to act together as a single entity, could repatriate as much as, say, 100 billion euros, possibly even more, of additional fiscal revenue back to Greece, which can definitely both increase the likelihood of success of any Greek program and improve the lot of Greek people, as well as calm some of the social unrest, at least part of which is coming from the huge, massive inequity of it all that everybody can see. Everybody can see the yachts, everybody can see the swimming pools and the big houses, and everybody feels the burden of adjustment on themselves. As jobs are lost, new jobs are not created, and you see a kind of migration that was last seen, I think, after the potato blight from Ireland.
Sony Kapoor, Managing Director of Re-define, thank you very much for your insights today.